It's time for Mac Stories Unwind. Federico Vitici, how you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. You know what? We have a special episode today. I think you've got quite the pick. And it
Hmm.
just so happens we were coming up with these picks independently. I had two picks, and I'm going to save one of them because the other pick fits very well with what you're gonna talk about. And so I think I'll go first because I don't have as much to say
Okay.
about this, and I think I want to clear the floor for you, Federico, and let you really go to town on what you've got to
Okay.
to share with everybody today. But my pick is a podcast. I haven't picked a podcast in a while, but this is the Video Game History Hour, which is a show that's produced by the Video Game History Foundation, which I believe is in Seattle, I want to say, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest of the US. In any event, it's hosted by Kelsey Lewin and Frank Cifaldi, and they are
Oh,
director.
nice.
They are
Okay.
they're directors at the foundation, and they've just got an incredible deep knowledge of video games because they run this history foundation that really tracks video games from the 70s all the way to the present. And what they do with this podcast is they tend to be about an hour long or so. And they have guests, and they're all kinds of interesting guests that cover a different aspect of video game history. One of the ones that I recently listened to that I loved was an episode about the Fairchild Channel F, which is a video game console that I had never heard of. Have you ever heard of this thing, Federico?
Never. No.
Okay. So this is like a late, I think it was late 70s console that was created by a company called Fairchild that was, I believe, doing computer stuff before that and watches and that. There's a lot of really weird old history when you go back to the 70s and early 80s before things really kind of coalesced around Nintendo and Sega and that sort of thing. There were just so many different kinds of consoles, a lot of them made by electronics companies in the United States and Japan that were, either making TVs or watches or the early personal computers and things. But I had never heard about this thing. And they had an interview with a person who had done a documentary about it on YouTube. And it was just fascinating to learn about what was going on because this was the era when the Atari 2600 was just about to come out and the Fairchild Channel F came out first, but they had all kinds of business problems and other challenges that they weren't able to really to overcome, or when they did overcome, they were so expensive that they didn't really succeed. For instance, this original console emitted all kinds of radio frequencies that messed with people's televisions, and the FCC made them go back and start over. So they had to encase the thing in heavy metal to block the RF frequencies so they wouldn't interfere with televisions, which cost a lot more money to build, which cut into their profits, and so on and so forth. So if you're into history at all, I love learning about the history behind technology, both the people as well as kind of the technical challenges that are faced and why something becomes a popular device versus not so much so. And this is very much, especially this episode, which was the one I listened to most recently. It really is a story of failure in a way, but they also pioneered some things, including the cartridge system that you found later in things like the Game Boy. So interesting episode, and a great series all in all. Is probably 70 different episodes at this point. And they come out I think once a month or so. So it's one of those that you can just kind of dip into and dip out of if you want, and it's not like you feel like you have to catch up on something every single week.
That sounds excellent. I am a big fan of the Video Game History Foundation, so I didn't know that they had a show. That's cool. That's a great pick. All right. I have a bit of a pick over here, John.
You really do.
So my pick, it's actually it's a whole thing. It's a whole emulator. So my pick is the Dolphin emulator. You may have seen, you may have witnessed me going deep down this rabbit hole of old Nintendo video game emulation over the past couple of weeks. And there's a good reason for it. It all started because I was increasingly upset at the realization that Nintendo is never gonna let me play Metroid Prime officially again. I completed, like a lot of other people, Metroid Dread a few months ago, and that left me with a huge Metroid-shaped hole in my heart.
Oh no.
I really wanted.
I get it.
Yeah, I really wanted to be able to play more Metroid, and I've been meaning to revisit Metroid Prime forever. I wanted to find a way to play Metroid Prime again. Now, I have long been familiar with Dolphin. Dolphin is an emulator for the Nintendo GameCube and later for the Nintendo Wii that goes way back. I was in high school when the first version of Dolphin came out in 2003. I remember the first version of Dolphin, and I remember how it was a big deal at the time because it was the first emulator to successfully run commercial GameCube games. The GameCube, of course, was the Nintendo console, home console at the time, and it felt incredible. 18 years, almost 19 years ago, that it was possible for a Windows PC to emulate a Nintendo GameCube. Now, 19 years is an incredible time span in internet years.
It
and
is.
A lot has changed in Dolphin since. First of all, Dolphin did not start out as an open source project, but it now is an open source project with tons of collaborators. Dolphin is an emulator that runs on all platforms, basically. There's Dolphin on Windows and Linux, which are sort of the main versions. There's also I would also consider the Mac version one of the main
I think so.
versions of Dolphin. But there's also Dolphin for Android, and there is Dolphin for iOS.
Don't forget tvOS.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean,
It's
Dolphin,
there. That's one of the places that I have in the past installed Dolphin, although
Right.
I haven't played it there recently.
Right. I think it's based on the Dolphin for iOS fork,
I think
which
it is, yeah.
developed by a separate team of people, but it's all Dolphin under the hood, really. And what's incredible about Dolphin, I think, it's the wide range of GameCube compatibility, Nintendo Wii compatibility, and the extensive support for the whole ecosystem of accessories and games surrounding these two consoles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dolphin is an incredibly deep emulator. It's a whole scene, you could say, in terms of there's a community of people around it. There's forums for Dolphin users. And it's an ongoing project with an incredible blog where they go into detail on all of the major features and bug fixes for the latest releases of Dolphin. Dolphin has been in the news lately, and that is why I'm picking it on Mac Stories Unwind, because they recently rolled out native M1 compatibility for Mac users with all the proper gatekeeper and permissions and the new security model of macOS, so that now you have native performance. There's an ARM version of Dolphin for Mac with native performance for Vulkan graphics. Now, this gets really geeky real fast, so I don't want to get into the weeds of what's different between Vulkan and the software renderer and OpenGL. Right. Basically, you can emulate Vulkan graphics on the Mac, and there's an M1 specific adapter that does the translation between the 3D engine used by Dolphin. Dolphin supports multiple graphic rendering engines. On Windows, which I will mention in a moment, you can choose between OpenGL, the software-based renderer, which is the slowest one. You should never use the software renderer. You can choose between OpenGL, DirectX 11, DirectX 12, and Vulkan graphics. I prefer Vulkan because it's got the best performance when you're using it on a portable machine. Okay. And I am running Dolphin on portable machines, and I will get to this in a minute. But basically, you can now use Dolphin with native performance on the Mac, which is what I've been testing for the past couple of days with my M1 Max 14-inch MacBook Pro with, how much RAM do I have in this thing? 32, 64 gigs of
64.
Okay.
You got quite a
That's
machine
a
there.
lot of RAM. That's a lot of RAM. Running the macOS 12.3 beta and the Dolphin beta version, not the bleeding edge development version, the beta version. If you go to the Dolphin website, that's the one you got to download. Now, why do I mention Dolphin in a portable context? Again, I wanted to play Metroid Prime, right? And ideally, I would really like to get Metroid Prime on a Nintendo Switch console.
Yeah.
Increasingly, that seems like it's never going to happen.
Very unlikely, yeah.
Very unlikely, despite, having been rumored for years. There's a whole other niche of the internet that is all about this new category of consoles. They are not really consoles. They are handheld Windows PCs. And they are not the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is the most popular upcoming handheld Windows PC. However, it builds upon a trend, maybe, that has been building up for the past 5 years, maybe, of these companies making these consoles that look like a Nintendo Switch. They have that form factor. I mean, the Steam Deck looks like a huge Nintendo Switch, right?
Yeah, it does.
But they are not Nintendo Switches, obviously. They are portable Windows PCs. Now, they are thick, they are chunky, they have a fan, but they run Windows 10 or Windows 11, right? And they usually have an AMD system on a chip inside. One of these consoles, one of these handheld Windows PCs, is called the Aya Neo. The Aya Neo they're working on a new console for 2022, but I got the 2021 version. It's a Nintendo Switch-like device, but it's a PC. It runs Windows 10. It actually is a regular Windows 10.
And they cost as much as buying a laptop, right? I mean, these are PC prices too, because I've looked at
these are PC prices.
Because I had never heard of this, Federico. I was really intrigued by this because, like you, I have bought some of these Android-based handhelds that are built in China that do emulation.
Yes.
And those are pretty cool. But this is a whole nother level because these are...
This is a whole other
These
level.
are true PCs built into a handheld.
These are true PCs with an AMD Ryzen 5 inside, right? You got the I got the one with the Ryzen 5 4500U graphics, and you have 2 terabytes of storage, SSD obviously, and you have a chunky battery inside that lets you play even something like Halo Infinite, for example. At low settings, mind you, of course, but you can. And you can play something like Halo Infinite at low settings, and it works, 30 frames. You can play something like Forza Horizon 5 at low settings, 30 frames, and it works. Or you can play indie games like Death's Door, for example, at 4K 30. You can do that sort of stuff. You can do some games at 4K 60 even.
Wow.
They're not high-end Windows PC, obviously, but they are Windows PCs with relatively good graphics. And usually a 720p or a 1080p display.
Right.
Like a Nintendo Switch. They're basically, what if a Nintendo Switch was a PC with AMD graphics inside? You can install Steam, you can install the Xbox app, you can install games locally, or you can play them via streaming. You can install Steam, your entire Steam collection, and it's a PC, but it's handheld. So that's how I started playing Metroid Prime again. I installed the Dolphin emulator on my Aya Neo portable console, and I started playing Metroid Prime. And then the more I started researching Dolphin, the more I realized how deep the emulation and modding scene goes. By that I mean, these are games that came out 20 years ago, right? Metroid Prime came out in 2002, 2003. In the past 2 decades, an entire community of developers and gamers who like to tinker around with things have come up with enhancements for those original games. Those enhancements, they're not just like usually you can install like a cheat code,
right, yeah.
for example, but it goes well well beyond cheat codes to get like infinite ammos or infinite health. There are cheat codes, for example, that enable widescreen graphics. These are games that came out on the GameCube, like the GameCube and TVs at the time, where they had a 4:3 format. They were not 16:9. They were the square shaped format. They were not widescreen games. There are patches for widescreen formats. There are HD texture packs and custom shaders that you can install. And this opened up a whole new world for me, where you can install a texture pack, which is basically like a folder containing thousands of images, that makes an old game like Zelda Wind Waker look incredible on modern displays. Now, this goes hand in hand with something else that Dolphin can do, which is upscaling the resolution of an old game to something like 4K or 5K.
Wow.
Or if you want 1080p or 1440p if you want, but you can also do native 4K and you can do native 5K if you want to. The upscaler, of course, it works for the 3D models. The textures, if you want to update textures, you will need to install a texture pack. Textures are basically, when you walk very close to a wall in a Zelda game and there's a painting on the wall. If you do the upscaling in Dolphin, you will see Link, the main character, being super detailed, but the painting on the wall is going to be low res. That's the texture, right? That's a texture that you need to modify if you want to, if you want it to look crisp and all shiny and lovely.
Right.
Now, why do I bring this up? Because it's been in the past few years that the modding scene has really picked up again, to the point where there are creators. I'm gonna blow your mind, John, here. There are creators of custom HD textures that have ongoing campaigns on Patreon. You can back people on Patreon.
We're just making texture packs.
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. That's fantastic.
But why? But this speaks to the idea that on the internet there's a niche for everything,
absolutely.
Right? Every niche can be big enough.
And technology has advanced to a point where doing these kind of high resolution things are possible, because I know you talked about this a little bit on the Connected Pro pre-show, but it's essentially like if you're familiar with something like Pixelmator Pro, it's ML super resolution, right? It's using machine learning to up-res these things but preserve the integrity of the image at the same time.
Exactly. That is exactly what's happening here, because these creators are taking advantage of these modern machine learning based tools, these AI based programs, to natively and efficiently upscale old textures. Again, we are talking about thousands of images, right? That are then combined and used as textures in a video game. They're using them to upscale them to 1080p or 1440p or 4K. And I want to give a shout out to a specific creator of HD textures. They're called Enrico Magnifico.
Okay.
Maybe they're Italian and it's Enrico Magnifico. I don't know. But they have a Patreon campaign that I became a backer of, and they have some incredible textures for GameCube games like Zelda Twilight Princess or Luigi's Mansion or Mario Sunshine.
Oh, wow.
They even have HD 4K textures for 3DS games. Now you may wonder, how can you even emulate a 3DS game? You can.
Really?
There's an emulator called Citra. Citra for it's a PC emulator. It lets you emulate a 3DS game, and you can play 3DS.
I had no
games
idea,
in
but
4K.
I didn't know that existed. Amazing.
Let me tell you, the textures that Enrico Magnifico does are amazing. Like they do a really good job in terms of, like, it's not just the textures. They also put together custom shaders for a game. It's a whole thing. It makes an old game look like what you remember. Even though what you remember in reality, like you try and play something like Luigi's Mansion today. Like I have right here, my original Luigi's Mansion disc for
Right.
the GameCube. I could plug that into a TV and it would
look horrible,
horrible.
especially on a modern TV, which is made for higher resolution than that. And, there's actually two technologies that are coming together here to make this possible. And I get why this is such a scene now. It's not only the machine learning that's allowing the up resolution of all these texture packs, it's the fact that now you have handheld devices that are powerful enough to drive those 4K images, right?
Exactly. So I've been personally playing Metroid Prime on a portable handheld Windows PC, upscaled at 4K, running at 60 frames per second with an HD texture pack. It's Metroid and widescreen, obviously. It's Metroid Prime like you've never seen it before.
Wow.
It's incredible.
How does the widescreen work? Is it cropping it, or is it adding stuff to the sides? What's going on there?
There's a whole thing about that. Basically, it needs to see beyond the original image, right?
So are the original images wider than they actually show on a television in the old days?
The Dolphin can do that.
Really?
So Dolphin, yes. Okay, so this is possible thanks to this technique that Dolphin can do. If you wanna enable widescreen format, but this only applies to some GameCube games, you need to disable this thing called frustum culling.
Okay.
I don't know what it means, but basically it's like some games that will build using this type of like off-screen geometry, basically, do not support widescreen hacking in Dolphin. So you need to go in there. This is why Dolphin is so incredible, and the creators behind it are so incredible. People have patched thousands of games for this already. You don't need to know any of this. You just go in the settings and enable a checkbox, and that's it. But I'm telling you that it's all about like the geometry of how a video game is built, and the graphics engine being used, and all of that. Anyway, so I've been playing Metroid Prime like that. Portable, ridiculous. And the ANEO, I can actually plug into my TV. It's got a new USB-C port that supports HDMI out.
Nice.
So I plugged in the Apple adapter. I got the Apple USB-C adapter that has an HDMI port, and I run a cable from the Apple adapter to the TV. The ANEO has multiple USB-C ports, so I plugged power in another USB-C port. And I've been playing, this sounds ridiculous, but it totally works. I've been playing Metroid Prime on my TV.
Giant 4K
4K 60, giant 4K TV. So native 4K 60 Metroid Prime with the ANEO being plugged into HDMI in the TV itself with an Xbox controller. Or even I have one of those like Bluetooth GameCube controllers.
Right.
That were popular because of Smash, on the Nintendo Switch and Wii U. It totally works. So I'm emulating a GameCube game on a portable Windows PC, upscaled at 4K with a custom HD texture pack, running at 60 frames per second, all while using a Bluetooth Xbox controller to play.
Wow.
But bear with me because it gets much better. Now, this was about the handheld PC. But Dolphin, as I mentioned, it also works on macOS now. And it has native M1 compatibility. So I installed by the way, I recommend everybody go read the latest blog post from the Dolphin blog. If you're a developer, if you're interested in reading about software development of any kind, go read that article and look into Dolphin, because beyond the GameCube and the Nintendo Wii emulation, it's just a cool software project. Like it's just neat that this is possible, and it's remarkable what Dolphin can do. But so the Mac version, I installed it on my MacBook Pro, and I started wondering, can I import my user data, my save data, for example, and my configuration, like my settings, from Dolphin on Windows? Can I do it on Dolphin on the Mac? Turns out, yeah, you can.
Wow.
Dolphin's configuration files are just a folder that you can copy and paste between machines. And because the files are not platform specific, they are Dolphin specific, I got all my settings and all my saves from Windows onto the Mac.
That's
now,
great.
As an aside, I wonder if there's a way for me to sync these files using
interesting.
Dropbox. The problem, though, is just one. On Windows, I can place a Dolphin anywhere. I could actually place the exe file for Dolphin and the whole thing in Dropbox. The problem is that on the Mac, Dolphin stores data in library, application support.
Yeah,
Dolphin.
you could solve that with Hazel probably.
So I could probably solve it with Hazel, or I could symlink it, maybe. I don't know.
Are they big files? Because if they're not big files, Hazel would be almost instant.
The save, really, at this point, I would be fine with recreating Mac-specific settings, which I will get to in a minute. So maybe the save files, that's all I need. And those are text files.
That's what I thought,
essentially. Maybe Hazel is an idea. That's a good point.
That's what I would do. How about iPad? Have you tried this on the iPad?
Oh, no, because I don't have AltStore installed anymore. I used to have Dolphin on the iPad, but it could not do 4K 60 on the iPad mini. I should try on the iPad Pro again at some point. Anyway, so the Mac version, like I said, you open Dolphin on the Mac, you go to graphics, you see, okay, I want to use Vulkan graphics, and there's a thing on my machine called M1 Max adapter. It's a setting that it's on by default, and it's using the M1 Max as an adapter for Vulkan graphics, because notably, Apple doesn't do Vulkan on its platforms. It does Metal. They have Metal graphics. Dolphin does not have native Metal graphics. They're using Vulkan graphics. But there's the native M1 Max adapter, which is I believe, a compatibility layer for Vulkan graphics. So, John, this sounds totally ridiculous, but I have been able to play 5K Metroid Prime at 60 frames per second with HD textures on my MacBook Pro, and it absolutely did not care.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is incredible.
And the screenshots that you sent me are just remarkable how nice they are.
It looks incredibly crisp. I was playing Luigi's Mansion with the custom textures by Enrico Magnifico. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That game, Luigi's Mansion with those, because again, Enrico does much more than just HD textures. It's the lighting effects. It's the shaders. It's, some textures are, is really, they're doing this incredible job to preserve the legacy and the graphics of video games. Luigi's Mansion with that texture pack, amazing, amazing detail. And the MacBook, it just didn't care.
Federico, you're gonna hate me for this, but I'm not gonna call you ridiculous until you buy a Pro Display XDR to run this machine in clamshell using your Bluetooth controller so that you can lean back, sit in bed, and use that beautiful giant display to play your Metroid Prime and Luigi's Mansion. That would be the ultimate in ridiculous, but I have planted the bug in your head.
Well, then there you go. This is basically my pick is Dolphin.
Wow.
It's an incredible emulator. Go read about Dolphin in general as a software project on Wikipedia or on the Dolphin MU website. It's just, even if you don't care about the video games, you should care because GameCube games are incredible. Yeah. But Dolphin is cool regardless. But you're tired of waiting for Nintendo to re-release Metroid Prime, Zelda Wind Waker, or your Nintendo Switch, you could do what I did and get a portable Windows PC. But the good news is you don't have to, especially if you are one of our many listeners who recently got an Apple Silicon Mac. You can run this thing with native performance, and you can play titles like Pikmin, Luigi's Mansion, Zelda Wind Waker, Super Mario Sunshine, Metroid Prime 1 and 2, Zelda Twilight Princess, this incredible deep catalog of GameCube games at 4K, sometimes 4K 60, and then you can load up custom textures in those games. It's it's Wind Waker at 4K. Trust me, it's a sight Really, it's something that you've never seen
Well,
before.
and you mentioned to me that you don't need the M1 Pro Max either. You
No.
can this will work on the regular M1 machines as well.
Even an M1 MacBook Air should be totally fine. There are videos of people I've seen on YouTube playing Super Mario Sunshine, upscaled with custom textures on an M1 MacBook Air using Dolphin.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give this a try. This sounds really fun.
All right, all right.
Wow, Federico, that is amazing. You've been a busy person this week. I mean, and it's all for the content, which is good.
It's all for the content always.
And you've now, I may have planted the Pro Display XDR in your mind, but you've planted.
Yeah, I wish you did.
You've planted the portable PC idea in my mind as well, because I, like you, prefer playing handheld with games.
Yeah, but wait for the next one though. Don't get one of the existing ones.
I had never heard of these, and I went immediately when I saw you tweet about this. I went to the website and I was like, oh, well, these are a little pricey, but they look really cool. And I saw that they're working on some new ones, so I'm going to keep my eye on this as well. All right, that is it for this week. You can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net and Club Mac Stories, where we're writing all the time about Apple stuff. Federico is also on Twitter and Instagram, where he's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVORHWS. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.